think we can get started. So welcome everyone. Please say hello in the chat box. And particularly welcome to those of you who are new to our get together here. And also, are there any questions that I can look at before we get started? Any questions that may be pertinent to our practice together? All right, welcome everyone. Everyone coming in from different places, from Vermont, Abenaki land, Chicago. Welcome to those of you who are joining for the first time. Excellent. Yeah, and for those of you who are here for the first time, this is a guided practice. You can look at the resources that we have in terms of a more formal practice that we started out working with, and as well as a practice video and instructions that you can follow for that practice as well. That's all linked in to the sign-in page for this room. But our practice tonight is just guided practice, working with energy. You know, everything is energy, right? And so Tantra, the tradition of tantric practice, and I'm often saying tantric magic now as well, but Tantra emerges as a system of practice, really tuned into our taking really as its goal, its project, a kind of relationship building with energy, as everything is essentially an expression of energy. Energy held in space, and that space is of course held by emptiness. So space and emptiness really ride together, and energy imbues all of this, or saturates everything. So energy is the suchness that keeps emptiness from coming off so cold or void, as we would see maybe in nihilism, and like in nihilist philosophical systems, nihilism or emptiness, the nothingness is really quite, I don't want to say violent, but it feels violent. The way nihilism is framed sometimes feels very violent. It's too sharp, it's cold, it's a nothingness. It feels unkind. I think that emptiness in this framework, in the tantric kind of Buddhist framework, is actually quite warm. There's a warmness here. The warmness is the energy, right? And of course, that energy is also the risk as well, because this energy frees us or it binds us and incarcerates us. And what most of us, probably the reason that most of us are joining the space tonight, is that we feel slightly incarcerated by the realness of phenomenal reality, right? That realness is shaped um, by our minds, which in itself is also energy, conscious energy, energy that knows itself. And our consciousness shapes this suchness, this energy that saturates everything into, phenomena, shapes and sounds and feelings and narratives and histories and futures and this and that and so forth and so on, right? And what we're trying to do in Tantra is, well, first of all, recognize the illusion of all of this, that this is just a magic trick, something that's being shaped, right? That we're somehow consenting to, and we're trying to disrupt that consent, right? Because we're shaping something that isn't in line with our benefit. This is not helping us, right? So practices like Medicine Buddha and the tradition of deity practices is a skillful system of practice that helps us to remember that this is something that is being shaped by us, and therefore it is something that we can actually begin to disrupt as well. But I hope the disruption is gentle. Tantra there's a swiftness to practices here. We're just gonna go right into emptiness as quickly as possible. And when some people get really, that could feel like suffering to move too quickly into emptiness. I know some of you have had teachers who specialize in taking students to meet God, and I do too, and it's fun. And at the same time, it's really difficult because it's so quick. When I say going to meet God, I mean, when I say God, I'm always talking about emptiness and space. This primordial experience of liberation, right, is God, is Buddha nature, is emptiness and space and energy. Healing, in this context, particularly in the context of Medicine Buddha, healing is only about transcending suffering, right? And sometimes I don't think it's even about feeling well or a sickness or something being cured. Because that's really not the point here of all of this. Like I think what tantric practice, and I think Medicine Buddha practice in particular, is actually trying to do is help us to understand and to experience even that suffering is an expression of this emptiness as well. The suffering, the sickness itself, the thing that we're struggling with, all of this has the same essential nature as everything else, as of course, as Lauryn Hill said. I'm just adjusting my camera, I'm sorry. This formation isn't portraying the healthiness of my skin, so that bothers me. If I don't feel good about this, then you won't feel good about it. So that's how that works. So anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, I think the project of Tantra, the project of healing and Medicine Buddha is really about recognizing that even our suffering, that even this kind of experience of of discomfort itself is also arising from emptiness, that the nature of suffering is emptiness, like the nature of everything, right? So therefore, it's not so much about healing, but it's actually about getting us to understand that even our experiences of suffering from sickness or from any kind of obstacle is itself something that's being created as well, and that we've consented to because we have bought into the realness, right? We think that we're the snake charmer, right? But instead, the snake is charming us. So samsara, the carceral state, though we believe that we have all this agency, is actually charming us, right? And then the solution, the antidote, therefore, is to realize that there is no snake charmer, there is no snake, there's nothing to be charmed, none of that, there's nothing to begin with, right? So you come back, right, to this basic work of saying, you know, you come back to the basic work. I say a basic work, but this is the monumental pinnacle of Tantra practice, is actually beginning to understand and to embody the emptiness, right? And when we begin to embody and experience the emptiness, it's not that the world disappears, it's that the world reveals itself as just being a magic trick. And then you lose this anxiety, because anxiety is what perpetuates, so much of this experience. The anxiety is just like the fear of saying, okay, what's next? What if it's not this, then what is it? So we choose what feels safest, but it's not safe, but rather it's familiar. And so we conflate familiarity with safety, right? And this is why some of us can't make choices we can't make choices to take the risks, to begin to experience freedom and liberation from the causes and conditions that incarcerate us. Which is another sinister kind of expression of the carceral state of samsara, when we start believing that the most intense suffering is actually taking care of us because it's familiar, and that it's like we get it, we understand the suffering, right? Because we have a lot of data and a lot of experiences, and we think the suffering in many ways is telling us the truth. Like, this is suffering in a way, the surface truth, that this hurts, this is uncomfortable, absolutely, but it's not telling us the real truth. But actually, I'll take that back. Actually, I think suffering is actually telling us the deeper truth, right? Because in tantric systems, particularly in Mahamudra practice, which is just a system of meditation and the philosophy around emptiness, like the philosophy of Mahamudra says that anything that arises is actually pointing you back to its essential nature, which is emptiness and space. So if you take that view and apply it to suffering, the suffering is always pointing itself back to emptiness, but we're not tuning in to that disclosure of suffering, But that is the worldview of tantric traditions, is that everything is the expression of this emptiness. And if everything is an expression of emptiness, then in that logical setup, then everything is pointing us back to emptiness as well. And that's just kind of a law that you have to kind of train in. It becomes an intellectual training, then through the system Mahamudra, which includes shamatha, and insight meditation, and meditation on emptiness, and deity meditation, which is what we're doing tonight. Tantra uses these methods to to re-situate ourselves within the primary liberatory experience of emptiness. I might have used too many words to get to that. And so that's what we're trying to experience, is touching back into emptiness, right? And so more legit, more tangibly, like in the moment of intense crisis, like in this moment of being in the world right now, like part of our practice has to be remembering that everything is an expression of emptiness, right? But if we realize that expression of emptiness of all phenomena, it doesn't mean that phenomena disappears. You're going to still be here. You're going to be moving through an illusion that you know to be real, but as a part of this plane, or spectrum of existence, then there's still some work that has to be done if you want to continue to be here. Now, I think when you realize emptiness, you have complete agency to leave and transcend. However, in Buddhist tantric systems, like not all tantra is Buddhist, but in the Buddhist realm of tantra, it is compassion that compels us to realize the nature of emptiness, the emptiness of all phenomena, to first experience freedom for ourselves, and secondly, to help others get free. So to be in the world as a realized being who may actually understand and embody, the truth of things, means that you are choosing to be here, to remain in the illusion, because there are other beings who need to be freed from the illusion and invited to return back into the experience of emptiness, which is our most fundamental primordial natures. And that's what we're trying to do in our practice, Medicine Buddha. I think that's what we're trying to do with all Buddhist tantric deities, is to return back to this experience of emptiness and to remember that we have an ethical obligation to help others get free, because we didn't get free through our own volition. So the ethical obligation arises not because you give a shit, but I think the obligation arises because you realize that another being, I would say countless beings, chose to help your silly ass out. I say silly ass, I refer to myself as someone who in the past has been a difficult student. I'm sure none of you can relate to being a difficult student, but many beings in my case chose to deal with my bad attitude at many times, at many points in my life, to stick around to help me develop this practice, which I'm sharing with you. Having realized that, and this ethical obligation arises that says that I've been given something, and ethically I should be passing this on, right, to help others, right? Which I guess in a way you could say that also means that I give a shit, that I care about beings, So I think both of those things are happening, that I feel obligated to share something that was freely given to me, and I want people to be free in the same way my teachers wanted me to be free, and thus chose to offer practice to me, even when I wasn't interested or paying attention, which I know each and every one of you can relate to, right? I mean, that works for me. I mean, I think that short teaching really does it for me. I don't know about you all. That really like boils it down to something that feels manageable. Um, and I realize some of you are just like, I don't really get this. Um, I would be surprised if all of you did get it. That's because it takes years of working practice and moving through practice to begin to develop insight into this. You know, to say and to think, oh, everything's empty, it's just a thought. It's just a thought. And it sounds wonderful and amazing. And it may be a source that that thought may help to alleviate some suffering. And I think it does, absolutely. But the real alleviation of suffering, the real freedom only comes when we continuously practice turning our awareness back into emptiness over and over and over again until that experience of emptiness is something that begins to, it feels like a candle being lit somewhere in your experience. There's a little bit of light that begins to illuminate the darkness of delusion. You know, it just you just need a little bit of light, right? And then you begin to trust that indeed the most essential labor of life is actually to free ourselves from the causes and conditions of suffering while helping others to experience liberation as well. Is the experience of emptiness in our daily life describable? Are there clues that we are brushing up against it, experiencing as presence? Well, how much space do you feel? Do you look at the news and feel spacious? That's that's a really good test to begin with. Even more, even better, turn on Fox News and tell me how good you feel over 5 minutes. And that's going to determine how much this practice has taken root. And when you look at, you know, like just violent propaganda that we can find anywhere now, when you look at that and when you begin to say, oh, people are suffering, that people are doing their best to be in relationship to their suffering, that we're all going to die and it's okay because we die, that's what we do, we transition, but death doesn't exist. That you remember your compassion, that you remember Tara, you know, that you remember that in the scheme of things, there's no such thing as an end. When you start having those contemplations, I think you're getting somewhere. You know, when you look at the state of samsara and you say, well, there's potential here for something else. Like when you no longer allow samsara, the carceral state, to define your potential to get free, that's when you know that you're touching into emptiness. Because you no longer see something that feels like a dead end or an obstacle. You see something that's asking to be moved through, related to, and transcended, right? When you see the brick wall in front of you and say, I don't believe in a brick wall, so I'm just going to keep going. And this is what Tantra is actually asking us to do, is to keep moving into the illusion of realness so that we begin to challenge the supposed superiority of realness, right? To trust that there's something else beyond what I think is the end. Because if you think death is the end, then you have more practice to do. like that's another big sign that when you think that death is the ending of something, You should talk to more dead people, which I know some of you do. Right? Let's just say conversations don't end because someone dies. I'll just put it like that, you know. So do you feel the realness of samsara triggering space for you? When you start getting tight, do you automatically say, oh, why am I getting tight? This isn't even happening. What's really actually happening, but this kind of illusion I'm participating in, right? So those are the clues. It's not visions, it's not, you don't get, it's not having visions of God or Jesus or Buddha or someone. It's not so sexy and glamorous like that. It's actually quite mundane, but you will notice it though. And you're not bypassing anything. Like this is, of course, this can be, we can get into this conversation and say that, oh, we can definitely bypass the realness of the world, which is a thing, to bypass the relative for the ultimate. But you haven't really done anything. Like you haven't earned anything to say, well, everything is empty. Again, it's just a thought, right? But to work the practices and to move through suffering, right, is to actually begin to earn your realization, right? You begin to earn goodness, which we call merit. When we do the practice and we hold the space and we tend to everything and we turn to compassion and we turn to the clarity, that's when the practice actually begins to wake up for us. Right? If you're not doing that and instead you're just like having a series of contemplations about the emptiness of everything and choosing to bypass the help that people need, you're actually digging yourself deeper into samsara because you're actually not taking the relative as a path into liberation. You're bypassing the relative. There's no freedom without moving to the relative, because the relative is where you are. You have to start where you are instead of where you want to be. That becomes another layer of illusion that you have to work through. And this is, why some people get so hard-headed here with the practice, is because you can't tell them shit anymore, because they've like convinced themselves that they're doing the work of liberation by bypassing the relative and numbing their experiences of the sensational world and saying, oh, this must be freedom. It's just another layer of delusion that you're going to have to crash through. Right. And this is why I don't want to get so much into this, because I know this is going to end up being a talk about the matrix, but I'm going to resist that. I'm going to keep it from turning into a talk about the matrix, but I have to point this out. All this AI nonsense and all of this, like, what is it? Like, what is Facebook doing? The like e-universe thing, the what's it called? Meta and AI,
Metaverse.
the metaverse. Yeah, so the metaverse and AI, this is just the beginning of some of our favorite science fiction movies. Like the Terminator and the Matrix, and anything where robots rise up to take over the world, right? I'm not saying this technology is inherently wrong, but I'm saying it's creating another layer of delusion that we're going to have to create new dharma to cut through, right? To get through. Like we keep distancing ourselves more and more and more from the essential labor of just holding space and tending to the suffering. That's all we have to do. Now I realize that's a lot. That's a lot of work to do. But that's all we have to do, which is everything. There's a contradiction here. I realize that. It's easier said than done. I get that. But everything that many of us do is about trying to outrun the suffering. And the suffering, you can't outrun the suffering, because the suffering, you're wearing the suffering. You'll have better luck trying to outpace your shadow, or you can pull a Peter Pan and cut your shadow off, right? And you can do that technically in dharmic practice language. You can actually desensitize yourself from suffering like that, right? But it doesn't go away, right? You just put it to the side and try to ignore it. Like the only way to get free is to take care of the suffering, move through the suffering, right? Not create more elaborate layers that distance ourselves from the experience of suffering, right? That is the work of the Bodhisattva right now, is to remind people that there is suffering to tend to, instead of reacting to the suffering, instead of weaponizing the suffering, instead of blaming all the suffering on something else, or expecting something else or someone else to heal you. You actually have to heal yourself. You have to save yourself. Two, we are inspired and supported by community. That's what we're doing. We're doing collective practice. We're supporting each other. But you're going to have to work to get out of this. I can't save you. I can show you how to get saved. I can give you some experiences. I can take you to God, but I can't leave you there, right? Like, it's like it's my vehicle that you're riding in. Like, I have to return this back to the shop, right? Like, I have to use it. I have things to do. I'm just giving you a ride, but you have to figure out how to get your vehicle together, to get, and, to remember. What is this? The idea of emptiness being mundane has always confused me, because what if one's path is to move through great ecstasy of this human body? Well, because all that becomes distracting, because ecstasy isn't the goal. Ecstasy is an experience of a more ultimate expression of mind that you can't feel right now because you're embodied. We cannot experience the full nature of mind because it will annihilate us, even if you could, right? It will annihilate us. Like everything becomes mundane because it's easy for us to get fixated onto experiences that are just streams coming from the nature of the mind, but not the mind itself. So we get distracted by the river, the stream, and we forget that we're trying to get back to the ocean. So we get to the stream and you're like, well, this is enough. I'm just gonna like hang out at the stream. No, follow the stream back to the ocean. This is what we're doing, right? And it's great when we find the stream, but we don't stop. This is why the Gate mantra is really important, the Gate mantra in the Heart Sutra, which says beyond, beyond. So once you think you've gotten somewhere, you need to actually realize that you haven't and keep going. The only somewhere we're trying to get is back to the nature of our minds, right? We can only experience a part of that in our bodies, in the world. Even if you are an enlightened person, an enlightened being, an embodied enlightened being, you still don't have access to the full capacity of your mind, because you've chosen to enter into the spectrum which actually means that we have to dull ourselves to fit into the spectrum, not because we got sucked into it, because we chose to be here to help. You chose to enter into the matrix to help. And so the risk, but also the trade-off is that there will be experiences of suffering, but you don't have to believe in those experiences of suffering. Mistakes will be made only because you have to stay around a sense of ego, a sense of self. Even when you realize the sense of self is an illusion. Right? If you're not in relationship to your sense of self, then how can you be in relationship to all beings who themselves are camped around and within senses of self, senses of ego? It's like knowing that the fire is going to burn you, but knowing that like you have to stay close enough in order, to stay warm and to have enough light to do the work of helping others. And so there's a risk, there's a dance there that doesn't beings don't always get it right. Enlightened, awakened, realized beings don't always get it right. I mean, there's so many beings, so many teachers and guides right now in the world who we call cult leaders, and so forth, who aren't necessarily like malicious. They just don't have the resources to balance this really complex project of being awakened in a world, trying to help people and still being in a relationship to an ego that demands to be cared for, and how that demand translates maybe into really unskillful actions within communities. I'm not justifying anyone's behavior. I'm just saying that there's reasons for this. There's reasons why there are these people who are really powerful and seem really awakened and also make really shitty mistakes, and engage in really shitty politics, and create harm for other students. There's a reason for that. Like everything just can't be thrown out. There's a intense complexity that begins to make more and more sense the more you begin to embody these experiences of emptiness, right? That there's a real risk to being a bodhisattva that we don't talk about, right? Because we get so overwhelmed with the positive things, how the bodhisattva is a superhero and the bodhisattva is here to save everyone, right? But the bodhisattva is also risking so much moment to moment. And, and when a bodhisattva really fucks up, a bodhisattva fucks up, Again, like that's how risky this work is, right? And do you have to come back? No, this ethical obligation, you don't have to. Like, who cares? You're fucking free. You don't have to come back. Like, it was that's the part of these teachings that I also really want to emphasize. It's like, you don't have to come back and help. Like, you get free, get the fuck out. I mean, why not? Like, you've done your work. This is what I'm saying. You've done your work, right? And you can return back to nirvana, wherever one goes. So this is a choice. Even the Buddha left. The Buddha was like, I've done what I needed to do, right? Spiritual bypassing. What are we doing? Clues. Okay, so ecstasy in this human body, and it's supposed to feel boring instead of intense microcosmic pleasure from being immersed in the flame of the present moment. That's a lot of language. And it feels, like you have to really make it boring. Like I like this is just for my years of practice. It's easy. I study a lot of the New Age work, this kind of New Age tradition, which is often characterized by a hodgepodge of like bringing all these different kinds of philosophies together, creating these pseudo practices that really take you to pleasure really quickly. And again, this is not the project of Tantra. It's not to go to pleasure, it's to go to freedom. Tantra isn't about Buddhist Tantra isn't about stopping at what feels good. It's about stopping. It's about transcending the binary of having to feel good or bad. Back into emptiness, back into the essence. Right. And I really want you to make that your project, because that's when the full power of these practices begin to awaken. Right. But also the risk is the full power of these practices will awaken. So you have to deal with that. Like if you choose to get free, you will choose to lose things. You will choose to be misunderstood. Like you will choose to to be really heartbroken sometimes, and to have to manage that heartbrokenness and the loneliness that comes from that, because you're choosing to get free in a context where most beings aren't trying to get free. Most beings aren't trying to get free, and that's going to be heartbreaking because you're going to realize the intensity of the work. This is what we study in Chinrezi. Practice Chinrezi was overwhelmed by the fact that so many beings were lost in delusion, and of course, broken into all these different pieces, was reconstructed as thousand armed Chinrezi, but that's still not enough to free beings. He just got upgraded. It was just an upgrade, that's still not enough, which means that you have to continue to do the work of holding that disappointment. That I can give everything that I can give to the project of liberation for myself, which you will get free. Like, you personally will achieve liberation if you put everything into it, but it's going to take everything. So you're not going to get free by keeping 10% out of the equation. You're going to reserve 10% of effort just in case this shit doesn't work out. So you have 10% of energy left. No, it's all or nothing for this project, right? So that can happen, and it has happened, But the heartbreaking thing, not that our personal liberation work isn't going to be heartbreaking, that's part of the work, but the real heartbreak, I think, is the understanding that a great majority of beings would not have put in that same level of labor as you. And then you're going to be like, well, how can I help? When you start helping, you realize, oh, like, how many people am I really going to get free? Beings are numberless. I vow to liberate them. Well, that's never going to happen. I mean, I hope I didn't really crash your practice with that. I'm offering you the same kindness that my teachers offered me when I started throwing that stuff up in the air, when I was like, well, I'm here to free all beings. And they're like, no, you won't. The Buddha didn't even free all beings. And I'm not saying that we're lesser than the Buddha, because we're all Buddhas already. But I'm saying is that, like, so much of this work is understanding the pervasive, the pervasive, sinister expression of samsara. Like, you have to realize what this really is, and so many people haven't realized this because so many people, again, keep running. I want to get rid of this word people, because it's not just people, it's beings. It's both formless beings and form beings in this trap, right? Samsara is more than just the relative, or this spectrum, the physical spectrum that we're engaging in right now, is also the non-physical spectrums as well, where beings are still trapped in experiences of samsara and carceral state. Like, we keep getting trapped because we haven't actually been able to draw a line and say, you know what, I'm going to turn the opposite direction and go into my suffering. And whatever happens, happens. That's when our relationship to the carceral state begins to be disrupted. When we challenge the state, when we challenge samsara, and we don't let fear determine how we're moving through the world and through our lives and through the spectrums and the planes and the realms. We say, whatever suffering there is, I will consume it. That should be the motto, right, of the Bodhisattva. That's the motto of the new saint, which is my reinterpretation of the Bodhisattva tradition. Coming to a bookstore near you on Halloween. Suffering is pervasive. I vow to fucking eat it. That has to be the mantra, right? Suffering is limitless. I vow to consume it. instead of it consuming me, because most of you are being consumed by suffering. Right? Eat it. Right? Eat it, eat it, eat it. You know, as Beyonce says in one of her many songs, like eat it. Well, Latrice Royale actually says that all the time. I'll just reference one of my other favorite queens, right? Like eat it. When I'm suffering, I fucking eat it. Like, what does it look like for me to be eaten by suffering after all this work that I've done? It's like when I suffer, I come online and say, you know what, nope, this is not how this works. Like, I'm not going to be consumed by something that doesn't even exist. And then you turn the tables and you start consuming. Consuming, it means we give it space. We stop reacting, we experience, we release. We call in our benefactors, our help. Like we call on the earth, we call on the ancestors, you know, we call in the energies that we need to help us do this work. That's the importance of Sangha and community, is that, yeah, we're doing the work, but we call in community to help us do the work, right? To feel community at your back as you're at your front lines of eating, consuming the suffering, right? So I keep saying that, like, you have to let go of being attracted to the ecstasy and everything, because it's going to take you away from the hard work, the labor, because we're always going to choose comfort. You know, well, not always, you know, but initially we're going to choose comfort because the labor is going to feel really intense. Right. So again, I just want to always emphasize that I'm not really interested in teaching you. I'm not interested in you being happy or, you know, pleasurable. I'm not interested in you worshiping me. I'm not interested in what else, whatever one is said to be interested in. Like, I'm not interested in you being comfortable and happy and making a home in samsara, in the carceral state, because I am fundamentally opposed to samsara as an experience. I'm fundamentally in opposition to delusion, right? So I'm fundamentally in opposition to any way that you're trying to make a little like cubbyhole in samsara, right? That's a fundamental ethical disalignment that you will have with me if you're trying to get comfortable here, right? And this is why I say the work of the Bodhisattva will be misunderstood, right? Like the only real thing to do is to get free, right? And if you do that, if you have that as the goal, the work, then everything else is going to happen. I promise you, the ecstasy, the pleasure, all that's going to happen automatically. But that those experiences can't be the goal, because it's going to limit you. Go all the way. But when you think you've gone all the way, you're going to realize that that's just the beginning. Actually, when you've thrown everything into it, you realize there's much more to throw into this. This is why we have the Gate mantra, Gate, Gate, Parasam, Gate, Parasam, Gate, Bodhisattva. You keep going and going and going and going and going till you realize that you've forgotten that you're going, that you're going. You have to forget that you're working. And work, the liberation, has to just be normalized. So it's no longer the case where I'm like, oh, I'm working. It's just like, oh, this is how it is. I'm moving. I'm leaning towards something. This is how it is. You know, I'm not working, I'm being. You know, I'm experiencing, I'm consuming, I'm eating. This is just how it is. You know. But this is like just ancestors. This is my ancestors speaking. You know, my ancestors are like, well, Listen, we can make it sound really cute and pretty and philosophical, but we really need to leave the plantation. So let's just cut through that and get the fuck out of here. We can write our poems and our odes to freedom after we get free, you know? That's where I come from, right? That's who I was raised by. That's what informs me. Is to like, let's just do the work now. Let's just do it. Like, stop thinking about it, do it. And again, if you're looking to feel good doing this work, that this is not the Dharma that you're gonna get from me. Because at the end of the day, you just have to fucking eat it. And it's gonna taste like shit. It's like drinking ayahuasca. Like for those of you who drink the medicine, it's just like, I don't want to influence you for those of you who never drink ayahuasca, but like the real work is actually getting it down your throat. Because you're like, how can something like this be edible? Like it's, you know, that's the real work. If I can get past that and keep the medicine down, I can handle what comes next, right? Um, but you have to eat it. Just eat it. Like the world is overwhelming, great, eat it. You know? And I don't feel sorry for you because there have been countless other beings who've ate it. That's why we're here. Someone had to do this before because what are we practicing? Where did this come from? It comes from the experiences of people who did their work and they passed their work back to us. And now we're practicing that path of profound liberation. Eat it. Like no one's gonna come and save you. I'm sorry. Like no one's gonna come and save you, right? But my practice is what I rely on. And when I rely on the practice, you rely on all the beings who are connected to liberatory practice. The countless beings, actually. Like, yeah, no one's going to save you, but there are countless beings who are ready to help lift you up. You're still climbing. As my ancestors used to say, you're climbing the mountain. You're climbing. Usually you're climbing the rough side of the mountain, right? But God is there lifting you up as you climb. That's Black liberation theology. Like God is always lifting us up. And in the Buddhist sense, right, if we can just consent to the help that we're getting, it makes the work a little easier. I would say a lot easier. It's still going to be hard, but it's going to be easier. But you may not have a context to understand that. So, right. If we can get out the way and allow ourselves to be helped as we continue to do our labor, then this will begin to change. There will be joy in the work. There will be deep appreciation and gratitude in the work, right? There will be insight and vision in the work, right? There's a decentering of self in the work. So you're like, oh, I'm working, but it's not just for me, but it's for my descendants. It's for my ancestors who are still not done with their work. When you work like this and you realize that your work is actually benefiting a lot of different beings, that begins to really energize and motivate you, right? So again, my motivation isn't to feel great, to have fun, it's to get free. There's a plantation for me to leave and I am intending on leaving it. That's the audacity that you have to have, right? There's suffering and I plan to leave the suffering. But to leave it, I have to go through it. And that's what it means to leave the plantation. You thought you were really suffering. Well, wait till you leave the plantation, right? And you're facing death. Death is right in front of you because there's no other options, either like getting free or death. And most people receive death, right? You have to be willing to hold those consequences. Like a good activist should be trained to hold the consequences of their disruption. It shouldn't be a surprise, right? That's what we risk. That's what we put on the table to change, to create change, to disrupt the roots of violence. There are consequences There are consequences to living in a world where people are fiercely attached to their comfort and their delusions, and that they will annihilate you if you disrupt their delusions, their comfort, right? And can you hold that? And can you hold it by realizing that this body is just an expression of my mind? This isn't what's really happening, but this is just a version of what's happening. I mean, all this is really, it's really really, the carceral state, the carceral the carceral logics of being bound, being trapped, being kept, delusion. It's at the heart of the carceral state. I'm just reading through some of this. You have to experience everything. You can choose pleasure, but you also have to choose the discomfort. You have to choose everything. Like the freedom isn't about saying I'm gonna go over here and just do this. Freedom means that I open to everything and everything becomes everything. Everything is an expression of emptiness itself. When we're just choosing experiences, we're participating in these logics around binaryism. The binary isn't going to get us free necessarily in this context, right? You have to, what's another way of saying it? You have to, one clue that we get when emptiness begins to really awaken for us as an experience is that you realize, well, I have to say this again, that everything is everything, that the nature of pleasure is the same nature of suffering. Once you get to that place, then there are no more barriers. The phenomenal world is no longer an obstacle because you're no longer trying to avoid everything. You're yeah, this awakening is right here. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to avoid everything. I just have to remember that I am an expression of emptiness. All phenomena is an expression of emptiness. And I have to just expand into that and just be. And so many of our teachers, I just want to point this out, so many of the teachers that we studied with in the past have not had to struggle to be safe in the world. They've not had to survive systematic violence and institutional violence, right? So that Dharma, those teachings are really coming from a context that lacks justice, that lacks, when I say justice, it lacks a tangible grounding in the relative as the path itself, not to bypass the relative, but to move through the relative into awakening, right? We bypass the relative because we don't want to deal with the suffering of the relative. Yeah, you can get free without doing ayahuasca. You can get free without doing Buddhism. That's another thing. There's more out there than this. This is what I've chosen. This is what landed with me. This is what I'm using to get free. But there are many paths to get free. There are lineages that have never been written about, but people are practicing it. There are teachings. that will never be widely known, but there are people practicing those teachings and sharing those teachings, right? Buddhism doesn't have the market cornered on liberation. You know, it's just another path to get free. Plant medicine is another path to get free. Indigenous practices are another path to get free. You know, Vedic practices are another path to get free. I mean, just so forth and so on. You know, you can get free through God, through theology as well. You know, like you have to, some of you aren't practicing enough. Like quite honestly, and I'm not meant to judge you, you're just not practicing enough. You're not practicing in a way that's appropriate to the intensity of samsara. You know, tantra is about meeting energy with energy. So if a brick wall is coming towards me, I'm going to meet that energy with the energy of a brick wall. Like if fierceness is coming towards me, fierceness is what I'm delivering, right? If you've not ever had to struggle, this is going to be really hard. You know, this is really hard work coming up for us. You know, yeah, Jill. So acknowledge the whole truth and don't focus on understanding the big picture. Trying to understand something is feeds into carceral logics because samsara will not be understood. You know, I mean, we can get a good philosophy around it, a working philosophy that's just enough for us to get the hell out of here. You know, but the nuances, like you're talking about trying, we can step back and look at the whole forest instead of having to look at every individual tree to understand the forest. Another way of putting it. Um, like the world of phenomena and the world, our experiences of phenomena and sensation, yes, we can learn and train to focus on them. This is what we do in our meditation practice. But at some point, we begin to understand and experience that the nuances, the minor workings of phenomena and sensation are actually just expressions of one experience of emptiness. You know, that all these waves are arising out of the ocean, right, of the mind, right? And at some point, we have to realize that the wave isn't other than the ocean, nor is the ocean other than the wave. You know, that is all the ocean. Once you come into that, once you realize that the thought is just the expression of the awakened mind, then that's when you're getting somewhere. You know, I can focus on the thought, but at some point I have to let go of how special a thought is and remember that everything is everything. You know, cannabis is a plant medicine, right? You know, and of course we're all struggling with being colonized. And so it's like we live in a context that, you know, and accurately casts certain things as, you know, not being conducive to whatever culture, society. Um, but any plant is wanting to be allied with, you know. But if you ally with plants, it has to be from the point of liberation, not from a point of bypassing, right? Even ayahuasca will give you, can be used to harm. That's the ethics of of something like ayahuasca. It's like, okay, well, the medicine would be like, well, I guess you're not here to help, but you have the agency to make choices. This is what plant medicine is actually giving us. This is what we have to take responsibility for. Like, we have agency. We have to choose to want to be free. The medicine isn't going to force us to be free, right? When you ally with plant consciousness with the intention of getting free, then plant consciousness, that's the perfect alignment with plant consciousness, right? Because plant consciousness understands suffering. Plant consciousness isn't bound to the spectrum of suffering like we are. So plant consciousness abides in a spectrum that actually transcends beyond suffering. So plant consciousness reaches into this spectrum as a doorway for us to enter into to get to their spectrum of consciousness, which is our spectrum. Our spectrum, our consciousness abides in that spectrum, but it's been covered over, and plant consciousness is trying to lift us out of these lower vibrational spectrums into these higher vibrational spectrums where the deities abide, where liberatory consciousness abide, where our consciousness really is, if we just remember that. But if you don't want to get free, listen, ayahuasca isn't going to drag you to freedom, right? Psilocybin isn't going to drag you to liberatory work. It'll give you an experience, but it won't necessarily be liberatory unless you are choosing liberation. And again, going back to this fundamental intention, some of you aren't really choosing freedom. Right? You're not choosing to get free because you're still being charmed by the snake. And the snake being samsara, the carceral state, you're still being charmed by it. Right? And the same with abolition. It's like, well, let's just reform everything. Well, you're being charmed by these systems because there's something that you're getting out of the maintenance of these systems that you don't want to abolish. And you have to ask those questions. How am I benefiting from the system in such a way that I don't want to abolish it, but I want to take the middle road of reformation? Let's reform these systems. Like, let's reform samsara. Samsara isn't a project for reformation. Samsara is to be abolished. Delusion is to be abolished. Right. This is direct. This is where I'm heading. Right. Like, this is direction now, for the work, to promote any other type of goal other than liberation is to become an agent of violence for you. Like, I am ethically obligated to point you towards freedom. Right? Not towards comfort, not towards happiness, but towards freedom, liberation. If I don't do that, I am no longer in service to the Dharma. I'm no longer in service to my ancestors. I'm no longer in service to plant medicine and consciousness, right? I'm no longer in service to myself. If I don't tell the truth that where I'm heading is freedom, right? And everything that freedom means, which is a huge responsibility to undertake. It's huge. That means you're gonna have to change, right? That means that you're gonna have to give up things, right? Because when my ancestors left the plantation, they weren't taking all their shit. They weren't taking their whole families, right? Like, it was like, grab what you can carry easily and start running. And if you're still afraid of death, right, then that's also going to keep you from being free. Because I can't tell you how many times I've had to put my life on the line to experience levels of awakening and realization on this path, you know? And I've been very grateful to have spiritual friends who know who can catch me when I have to make those deep dives, into the practice in the ways that I don't know if I'm going to come back or not. That's spiritual community. They will catch you when you need to be caught. That's what teachers should be doing, particularly tantric teachers should be catching you. Mhm. Right? When you start deep diving, call me, not on the phone, because I don't really answer the phone. But when you start deep diving, just pray. Send a prayer out to me, because I'm connected. you know, if you can get to me, you can get to Medicine Buddha. You can get to Tara, you can get to Chinrezi, you can get to Kali. If they're not accessible, this is why the teacher arises in the way that they do. That's why they do the work, because they become a link. I'm not policing this link. I'm just saying I'm a channel. If you can touch me, you can touch the deities. I'm not saying I'm a deity though. Like, I'm just saying I'm open, right? I mean, it's all been really fun. I mean, I wasn't planning to have this whole long thing, but um, oh, smell. Yeah, this is fun. Like, you have to have these moments of clarity. Like, it's just like you're gonna see some real, like, this is like I'm like in a real way I'm ready to come online, in a way that I've been afraid to in the past. Well, mostly because I haven't understood some of the stuff before, but now it's just like, no, like, this is like what needs to happen. We need to talk about freedom and start living free, right? And start taking these deities and all these countless beings at their word. If they say they're here to help, then let's take them, let's call them on it. Right? And that's why I had to start doing early in my practice. Tara said that she would be there when I called her, and I was like, I'm gonna call you then. Right? 7 homecomings. For those of you who are practicing with me now, it's just like when you call your benefactors, they are there, they show up. You have to have faith in that, you know. Yeah. Dzogchen is too much of a, Dzogchen and Mahamudra can be really intense dives, right? But you have to come back to being held. Dzogchen can take too much from you. Like, again, you go too quickly to emptiness, it costs, especially when you're still in the world. And if you're just consciousness, yeah, there'll be a different experience, right? But you're embodied, is the body being invited into emptiness? Right? Or are you trying to bypass the body to get somewhere quicker? So listen, we're gonna go 10 minutes past. So um, we're gonna go to 8:40. So I do want a little bit of practice, but it's gonna be really a shorter, less intense practice because it's already intense, so you're gonna have to settle this energy with practice, for a couple of minutes, you know. Yeah, to give it all away. Yeah. You have to give up everything to get everything. Everything meaning liberation, right? There's nothing really to give up to begin with, because there's really nothing to give up, because everything is empty to begin with. right? But that's rarely what we're talking about either. Like we go to these extremes about, I have to give up everything. No, you need to give up your fixation to everything. That's a difference. It's not the shit that we're talking about, it's our relationship to the shit. That's the issue, you know? Are you willing to give up how you have defined a sense of self through fixation and attachments, right? That's what we're talking about. Okay. Let's I'm just gonna enter into just a really, I'm gonna do prayer offerings as well. I just want to enter us into just a more of a calming, settling um, practice with medicine Buddha, just to settle all the energy, right? You've already been getting the transmission. You've already been practicing. You know, like that's you've already been doing practice, but I'm going to give you a little more that can take care of you, right? Because it doesn't. You can ask for care as you do labor. You know, you can climb up the rough side of the mountain, but you can pray for hiking boots. You can pray for a little bit of water, some hiking gloves, some rope going up that mountain. Of course you can do that, right? But you're still climbing, you know. Like the Dharma is taking care of us. This is what we're using, right? I use the truth, the power of Dharma to care for me as I am expanding and awakening into the essence. Right? That's why it's there. That's why countless beings continue to return back to this world system to teach. Right? Not always in the best ways, not always in perfect ways, but perfection is also a carceral logic that we have to abolish. Right? But beings are still returning to offer this care. Medicine, I would say, like they're still offering medicine. We can take the medicine to help us do the work. But the medicine isn't going to do the work for us. The medicine takes care of us and offers us resources that we use to do labor, to get free and to get others free. So anyway, I want you and I invite you to begin just by holding and awakening an intention to experience liberation from suffering. The intention directs our energy, it directs our work. I am practicing only to get free and to help others get free. And I want some of you to take this intention and treat it as a mantra and as a reflection. I want you just to reflect on this as much as possible throughout your day. Like this can be an intention that you reflect on as you're doing your mantra practice as well, you know. And when you're ready, shifting your attention down to your seat, noticing the weight of your body, making contact with your seat, allowing the seat to hold you, to take care of you right now. And shifting our attention even lower through the seat into the earth under us, So connecting our awareness, or rather our consciousness, touching into the consciousness of the earth, allowing the earth, the land under us to rise, to hold us and really all beings connected to the land. And I invite you to imagine that the earth, the land under us, this ancient, conscious earth, land, is awakening even more, that it's becoming, we begin to feel in its awakening consciousness, its care for us. That the earth, the land is, it really, that the mother in this case is really loving us, caring for us, wanting us to be free. And I invite you to imagine that in this connection with the earth, that the earth is actually telling us that we deserve to be free, to be liberated, to have all the resources that we need to awaken from suffering and delusion. And as the earth offers us this support, we notice our own doubts, our own obstacles, our fears, our brokenheartedness, our grief as well. And we imagine just offering these experiences, the energy of these experiences down into the earth, into the expansive, boundless consciousness of the earth, where the earth rises to hold and stabilize these thoughts and fears and energies that keep us from really working towards complete liberation. And as this relationship expands, as the earth rises to support us and to encourage our liberation, and at the same time, as we begin to offer our own doubts and fears and obstacles into the earth to be held and grounded, we turn our attention into our mantra practice, the mantra practice of Medicine Buddha, beginning to imagine that the mantra as the expression of Medicine Buddha's consciousness begins to clear all of these fears and doubts, and we begin to slowly, even minutely, but slowly begin to experience what freedom may actually feel like in this moment. O te adam begunze, begunze ma begunze, raza sumunga te soa. Te adam begunze, begunze ma begunze, raza sumunga te soa. Te adam begunze, begunze Ave, Ave, Sumunga de Soa, Eada, Peganse, Peganse, 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 Ave, Ave, de Soa, Eada, Peganse, Peganse, Ave, Ave, Sumunga de Soa, Eada, Peganse, Peganse, Ave, Ave, Soa, Teata, Beganse, 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 Rasus, Soa, Teata, Beganse, 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 Rasus, Soa, Teata, Beganse, 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 Rasus, Soa, Teata, beganse, beganse, ma beganse, Zoa, Teata, beganse, beganse, ma beganse, Rasus, Zoa, Teata, beganse, beganse, ma beganse, Rasus, Zoa, Teata, beganse, beganse, Ave, Ave, Soa, Teata, beganse, 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 Ave, Soa, Teata, beganse, 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 Ave, Soa, Teata, beganse, 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 Turning our attention now to our prayer requests. And again, as we begin our prayers, I call into the space all the beings who want us to be free, all our beings who are trying to care for us, love us, help to open the path towards ultimate liberation, including all the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yidams, Dharma protectors, all members of our sacred Sangha, to all benevolent ancestors, to all beings of light, to all the guardians and protectors of the land, and to the elements themselves, including the earth, right? To our descendants, also helping to create a more liberated future. We offer these prayers to you. Please hear these prayers and work on our behalf to bring about the fruition of our prayers to benefit all beings. We're offering prayers of gratitude for Lama Rod, the Sangha, and these teachings. Offering prayers for the health, safety, and freedom of my unborn child coming in December, that I may have all that I need to have a well-resourced child. Prayers for all beings in all realms, in all timelines and situations to be completely free, including me. Prayers to Bhumima, prayers for Nina, prayers to Rishi to be protected, healthy, and well, and at peace. Prayers for Lama Rod, Eric, and all involved in bringing life to Bhumi Sparsha through work and practice. Prayers of protection for me, for focus and clarity as I continue to battle and decolonize my way through a degree. I want to finish. May we all fucking eat the suffering. Shale. Prayers for Carla and Francesca. May they know themselves. May they embody their highest values. Prayers for myself as I navigate difficult questions and feelings on my way towards a likely painful relational transition in my relationship with my partner. May we both find the clarity, support, strength, and anything else we need to be well over the next little whiles, so we both can heal and move towards wholeness within ourselves. And prayers for all participating in the Sangha, that we all may have what we need to be whole and free as soon as possible. Offering prayers for me in my workplace after the sudden passing of our co-worker Arby on Saturday morning. Offering prayers of gratitude for all my beloveds, living in spirit, known and unknown. Offering prayers of protection for my beloveds. Offering prayers for all secret sleeper cell members of the global beloved community who are ready to bring in a new era of dignity, safety, and belonging when the goddess whispers go from the depths of their DNA. Prayers for those of us feeling lost and stuck. Prayers for all beings experiencing physical pain in this moment, that we eat it and it wakes us up. Prayers of assistance to stay out of my own way, to not pass up joy in any form, and to hold the heartbreak that is mine to hold. Prayers for everyone so that all may welcome, seek to understand, and offer grace to those different from them. Offering prayers of gratitude to the ancestors that hold my dad and my family as he has moved to a new level of his healing and spiritual journey. Prayers for all trans and gender expansive people in the US. May they be safe and protected and have what they need. Offering prayers for the uncompromising self-care to refuse the false calls to comfort, prayers to take all the risk that I am meant to take. Prayers to feel possibility despite an ongoing chronic pain and brain fog. Prayers for Jacob and his mother, Erin, that they may find some relief to this illness at the Mayo Clinic and be supported in that journey. For Eric, may he find relief and ease within his depression. For myself, may I feel comforted within this fear, trust my roots, and have the courage to let go into emptiness and space. May I remember that I am loved and held always. Offering prayers for me and my family as we move across 2 states and start a new chapter. Offering prayers for the Sangha and all Sanghas. Offering prayers for A and her baby. May they always be safe and have the support that they need as they go through divorce. Offering prayers for all of us with the intention of journeying through the darkness to come into liberation. May we free ourselves and from that place and help others become free too. Prayers for Elle that her fears about her identity being stolen are unfounded. Prayers for equanimity, for my equanimity group, and that we all find ease and healing. Offering prayers for all of us, all beings, the formed and the formless, the plants and the animals, for the earth and the universe, for boundless consciousness. Prayers for Brad and his health while being incarcerated without his medication. Offering prayers of gratitude and good fortune for everyone who keeps Bhumi Sparsha running. Offering prayers for Stephen as his chemical addictions worsen and his physical pain increases, and for his parents who love him and are afraid for him and who are tired. Prayers for me as I experience chronic illness, for transformation of all pain, confusion, fear into path, health, and compassion. Prayers for all other beings that find themselves in similar situations. Offering prayers for my friend who is struggling with the experience of truth. May she be supported and held as she works to be free. Offering prayers for Charles as he deals with metastasized pancreatic cancer, prayers for his family as they hold him as he approaches the bardo. Offering prayers for Jessica as she deals with feeling stuck in the suffering of grief. Prayers for myself as I endeavor to care for myself and to generously share liberation with others, drinking as I pour. Prayers for Douglas, who is experiencing suffering on top of suffering. May he be free. Prayers that I may get tired enough of suffering. Prayers for everyone struggling with belonging, that we realize it is ours. Prayers for Bear, that his health is protected, that he continues to thrive amidst the chaos. Prayers for me and the courage I need to fill my broken heart and all others. Prayers for the Sangha. Prayers for Sydney and Marvin and for all those who love who are gathering to celebrate them this week. Offering prayers for my parents' inner child and their parents' inner child, and may they feel safe and protected somehow in past, present, and future. Prayers that I will meet my 40th decade with presence, grace, and the courage and support to eat suffering. And we continue to offer prayers to abolish all systems of violence and harm that keep so many people from experiencing the resources that they need to be well, happy, and safe, and ultimately to be free, to be ultimately free from suffering. May all those in this space, in this practice space, in this electronic medium, may you who offered prayers, may you who hold prayers in your spirit and your mind. May you be liberated from suffering. May you have what you need in order to be well. May you be safe, and may you and all of us experience ultimate freedom as quickly as possible. And may we have what we need to eat the chaos instead of the chaos eating us. We offer these prayers to all those who have gathered to hold these prayers, and we ask you to work on our behalf to bring about the fruition of all of our prayers for ourselves, for our beloveds, for our communities, and for our world. May it be so. In returning back to the mantra just for a couple of minutes, releasing the energy of these prayers, including the anxiety around these prayers, into emptiness, into the earth. And may we develop the trust that the unseen world will collaborate with us, as it always has, to bring about our deepest desires for freedom, for ourselves, and for our beloveds. O te adong begenze begenze ma begenze plaza sumunga te soa te adong begenze begenze ma begenze plaza sumunga te soa te adong begenze begenze ma begenze plaza sumunga te soa begenze, begenze, ma begenze, lass es umangade soa. 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 Ehada Umbeganze Beganze Mahabeganze Radhasumagade Soha 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 Beganze, beganze, ma beganze, razas magade soa. 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 Ehada Umbeganze, beganze, ma beganze, Radhasumagade Soha. 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 Deata beganze, beganze, ma beganze, Radhasumagade Soha. So, so returning our attention to the seat, returning again down to the earth, acknowledging the earth, the consciousness of the earth, our reliance on the earth as a benefactor, as an agent of liberation. We offer gratitude to the earth for supporting us, for holding us. And we remember as we transition out of our practice that the earth is always ready to hold us, to care for us, to hold what we struggle to hold for ourselves. And the earth is always present to remind us that we have a right to be free. Coming back into the space, maybe reawakening the body through simple movements, maybe a few deep cleansing breaths. And whatever we're still holding on to, we just offer to the earth. As an offering to the earth, we lay down everything that we're struggling to hold for ourselves. And we turn our attention to Shantideva's prayer, which we will recite 3 times together. May I be a protector. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space, and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space, and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, may I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. And finally, May I be a protector to those without protection, a leader for those who journey, and a boat, a bridge, a passage for those desiring the further shore. May the pain of every living creature be completely cleared away. May I be the doctor and the medicine, and may I be the nurse for all sick beings in the world until everyone is healed. Just like space and the great elements such as earth, may I always support the life of all the boundless creatures. And until they pass away from pain, I also be the source of life for all the realms of varied beings that reach into the ends of space. All right, well, thank you, everyone, for your practice. Please join me again if you have time on Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. UK time, for Free Radicals, which is our just like hour-long online, mostly like mindfulness-based liberation work and practices. Um, and And again, you can find that information on my website as well for Thursday. And I think that is it. We have a bunch of retreats coming up that are being announced slowly. Toronto on Juneteenth, not June, I'm sorry, June 10th, not Juneteenth, but June 10th, you know, I'll be in Toronto with the Consciousness Explorers Club. And you can find that information also on my website as well for that retreat. We have a retreat here in Atlanta coming up on the end of June, the last Saturday in June, I think June 30th. Just a one-day meditation retreat. So it's going to be just meditation, and it's going to be some new stuff in terms of like how we're moving forward with teaching here in Atlanta. So again, that's on my website, and you can register for that. It's only in person, not online. And I think those are the big things. On June 19th, we will be announcing the official book launch and the book campaign. So you can buy the book now, obviously, online. It's already there, but we're not going to tell anyone. We're not going to tell the masses until Juneteenth. We're going to announce the book cover and all the little stuff that we're going to be creating for the new book as well. So stay tuned for that. They'll be on social media and through email on Juneteenth. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you all so much for your willingness to hold this space, and just reminding you, just to contemplate, I deserve to be free. And I think this is work we're going to continue on Thursday in Free Radicals. Like, what does that mean to believe that we have a right to be free, and how do we incorporate, that instruction into our lives? Right? How do we train in that view? I deserve to be free, no matter what that may cost, because freedom isn't free. Thank you all so much, and I'll see some of you tomorrow night for 7 Homecomings practice. Okay, all right. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you, if not this week, next Monday. All right, bye.